Romania is a country that really appreciates their freedom and rights, especially after going through a communist phase where they had absolutely no freedom or rights. Personally, I think that communism is a systematic strategy that almost never works, but in theory, it sounds really good. Behind me is the original flag of Romania, made up of blue, yellow, and red to represent the two countries, Wallachia and Wallachia, that came together to form Romania. It's also designed after the French flag. Geographically, it's located between the equator and the North Pole, north of Bulgaria and to the east of Hungary and Serbia, surrounded by three bodies of water: the Black Sea, Atlantic Ocean, and the Mediterranean Sea. This is what it looked like after it turned into a communist country. It got the coat of arms, which is an embroidered symbol in the middle to show that it's now a communist country. It still has the same three colors and the whole thick three lines thing to represent the French flag design. And this is Ceausescu, who was the president during the communist phase. In 1947, he was elected. He grew up as a peasant and pretty poor child who got into communism, but he still got to be the president. In the communist phase, everything was totally corrupt, and people lost all their freedom of speech, and anything against the Communist Party was completely illegal. And Ceausescu was just spending money all over the place that Romania obviously didn't have, on palaces and museums, and tearing down people's houses to make room for these huge things that Romania didn't need. Romania also already wasn't very wealthy. And then there was the Warsaw Pact that was formed to protect the European countries that were in this pact together from any outside countries that tried to invade. They really loved each other. And then there was the austerity program that was really strict and brought a lot of poverty, even though it actually got Ceausescu to pay off a really big debt that he had been holding back. Then in 1989, a revolution finally began. People decided they were sick of the poverty, and the communism thing had to go. So they cut holes in the flag to represent that the coat of arms was no longer part of it. And student activists started getting involved and marching around rioting, and they were detained and investigated, but that just heavied down the law enforcement. Then there's a Hungarian pastor that started saying that obviously Romanians didn't even know their basic human rights. So they kicked him out of his residency and threw him into the outskirts of town, where a lot of students, religious students, would follow him, and passerbyers would follow him too. That's him. The last name Tokes. Then riots began to break out all over the place, and people were breaking into the residency of the communist leaders and trying to set it on fire, but they were stopped by law enforcement. But then the next day, things resumed just the way they were before. And they actually broke into that residency, and they threw all the communist papers out the window, and they were burning everything, and they tried to set that place on fire again, which did not succeed again. And then they made a new law called martial law, saying that no one was allowed to leave their house in groups bigger than 2. Yet 30 men still broke out of their house, chanting the original national anthem to represent that they weren't going to take it, and they were shot and wounded, and a few lucky ones escaped. Following all that rebellion, Ceausescu decided he needed to hold an assembly to show that he was still in power. So he had 100,000 people come to an assembly, even though over half of them were bribed or blackmailed. And what he didn't expect was that at the end of the assembly, it was just going to end in bombs, gun shootings, and more riots. Eventually, he was actually betrayed by his military just before Christmas in 1989, when there were constant street confrontations and people were getting run over and shot and stabbed and everything. And Ceausescu was tricked into staying when he was actually better off fleeing the country by flight. So his new military enforcements, because his old military enforcement had committed suicide, they tricked him into staying there, and he got held captive as a fugitive. And he was locked into a closet, and then the law enforcement came over and stole him and captured him. Once he was captured, he was sentenced to trial and immediately was declared that he needed to be executed. So him and his wife were executed, and there was a lot of controversy over whether it was unjust or not. But after he was executed, everyone was happy and celebrating, and they burned anything that reminded them of Ceausescu or the communist phase, and everyone was happy. And have a nice day. Thanks for listening.